Hello, hello. Welcome to my Ask Me Anything. I would just like to start by acknowledging I'm here on Wongal Clan land here in Sydney. You can hear the kind of sunset happening and all the birds around me. So I like to spend a second to acknowledge that I'm the beneficiary of dispossession of First Nations people, and to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging, to acknowledge too any First Nations people who might be listening in from anywhere around the planet. So welcome back to my Ask Me Anything. I've got three little things to share tonight, but I do like to just remind you that it is very general in nature and is not intended to replace any information that you get from your doctor or your primary treating psychologist or anyone else that might be working with you more specifically. If there's anyone who does jump on live, just be careful or be aware that we're going to de-identify ourselves so it's broad and you can't be kind of found out, so to speak. Take what you need. They're just suggestions. It's not gospel. It's my take on things. You might have other ideas, which I love hearing about. So feel free to drop them into the comments on YouTube below. And I will share this out with the community so everyone can benefit. The question that I got, it was either from Neil or Craig. I should really put names down here, but the question I got here are, what are the key differences in digital wellness practices, I presume that is, for young people versus adults? I really like this question. And really, this is about brains. It's always about brains. Most of digital wellbeing practices are about brains and how brains are then shaped. Brains are then shaped to really develop our behaviors and our attitudes, our opinions, all those sorts of things. So when it comes to the different practices, I've basically put there a picture of the differences between a 12-year-old brain, and I'm sorry, it's a bit hard to see, but you get the idea that people get older. As people get older, their brains actually develop more cortical matter, more gray matter, and this influences their cognitive functions. This influences our ability to do higher order thinking, to be able to process our emotions, to be able to learn from our experiences. I often say that the most important thing is really for young people to be able to practice having experiences so they can apply their knowledge. Sort of like driving a car. You can observe your parents driving a car, but until you're physically driving a car, you don't really know what that experience is. So we learn experientially. So I guess adults often, when it comes to digital wellness practices, when I think of this, I think, how do we regulate ourselves in online spaces, and how do we make sure we've done the stuff that we need to do without being too digitally distracted? Adults often have more at stake. Like, you have a boss, you won't get paid, you can lose your job. There's all of these kind of big levers that are much more, I guess, specific to adults than there are to sometimes young people, where there's not that same sense. Like, if you're in year 9, doing well in the HSC is very abstract. It feels like a really long time away. It feels like, oh, I'll get there. Tomorrow, I'll change my habits. Tomorrow, I'll stop gaming as much. So the next aspect to this is really that the adults around us need to role model and show young people how it's done. So and this is, I guess, where my work has really changed in the last, I don't know, it's constantly changing, but probably changed in the last 5 years or so. It's much less about what young people are doing and just as much about what parents are doing and what we're role modeling, what we're normalizing, what we're prioritizing around how we use tech. And often we're using tech for work. And so are we showing kids how to actually down tools and relax sometimes? So often kids can't self-regulate, which is the ideal. Most parents tell me, I wish they could self-regulate. I wish they would have self-discipline. I wish they would have all of these, self-control. That was when my master's was on. I wish they would have all of these things that they do themselves. But to do that yourself, you actually have to have training wheels and be co-regulated and co-controlled and disciplined. So that's part of the, I guess, the boundaries that we set up in our homes and as parents that we can role model, that we can support young people kind of develop. So the main differences, I guess, the practices shouldn't necessarily be the different for young people versus adults. But what is under the hood or under the skull, I guess, is what is different. This probably starts too with the fact that up until you're 18, you have screen time limits. But once you're an adult, there's no screen time limits. You can be on your screen for 24 hours a day and no one's going to say, oh, you've had too much screen time. I mean, obviously, yes, we are, but we don't have those really clear-cut limits that that American Academy of Pediatrics have been setting out based on nothing to do with screen time research. It's all about the displacement of activities and to do with sedentary behavior. So I think when we start looking at, again, I talk about adults should have screen time limits. We should have those digital calories. How many digital calories do we need? But not just looking at calories, because counting calories is really quite useless. It's looking at the macros. What are the virtual vitamins? Are we getting enough protein? Are we getting enough play? Are we getting enough of all of those different things so that it's an effective use of our time online? Because not all screen time is created equally. Jumping over to this question, we have Craig. I'm pretty sure this is your question. Is this correct? How do you discourage teens using multiple devices?
Actually, the previous question was my question.
That was your question.
Thank you so much
I got
for
it mixed up.
answering it so eloquently.
Oh, cool. Welcome. Where are you? Do you want to have a chat? Where are you dialing in from?
Yes, so I'm dialing in from Philadelphia in the United
Amazing.
States.
What time is it there? It must be like,
It's 4:30 in the morning.
shush. You got up for us?
I set an alarm and got
You're
up.
amazing. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've been following your work for some time now.
Wow.
And I got your newsletter the other day
Yeah.
that showed that you have these office hours.
Yeah.
And so thank you for that. And that's
Oh,
why I signed up and wanted to join.
amazing.
Um, I'm
I'm going to stop sharing for a second so we can see you.
sure.
Yeah, there you go. Because you
Okay, there
have
you are.
cool
Okay.
stuff happening in the background. Yeah.
So this is my
Mm-hmm.
consulting practice, the Digital Mental Health Project.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a background where I've worked for many years in the life sciences industry as a digital health innovator in some of the large pharma companies, and also as a function of a serious mental health illness diagnosis that happened in my family. Actually, my son, 20 years ago, was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Right.
So as a family, we have been in every part of the mental health system
Wow.
for better and not so much.
Yeah, I can imagine,
And what
especially
it
in
is about
Philadelphia.
a decade ago, my wife and I started this consultancy where we bring together the digital health and the caregiver educator advocacy work that we've done a
Amazing.
lot with NAMI here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so we work with healthcare professionals, investors, and startup founders, and we focus on doing education and research. We've developed this course, Stress Tech Literacy, which is about helping people to learn how to use their digital technology to stay healthy.
Beautiful.
Our focus is less on youth and more on professionals that are burning out and needing to either try to avoid burnout and illness or trying to improve their performance. So I've been doing, lately been reading a lot of books on digital minimalism.
Oh, yeah. So
Two of which I've done reviews on, and I just finished Cal Newport's Digital Minimalism, which I saw was on your Instagram site.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's not enough talk about what I think of as digital literacy and digital citizenship.
Yeah, and they're really hard sells, right? So if you've got over there Diana Graber I think she's in Orange County, just outside of LA, doing cyber civics. So she's huge on digital citizenship. You've got
Wow, okay.
Collier, you've got ISTE and their digital citizenship project. You've got tons over there. You're really leading the way.
Really?
Yeah.
So, so you're opening up my head now because I've missed all of those.
Oh, you've got to meet Di Graber, Pamela
How do you spell the
Rutledge,
last name?
Graber, Graber. So yeah,
Really?
Di's digital civics, cyber civics. I'm going to get it wrong now. She's got an amazing Instagram account. She's been working at this for years. Pamela Rutledge is from, oh, I'm going to forget the uni off the top of my head, but she's like, media psychology professor at, it'll pop into my head later. You've got
Okay.
someone like David Ryan Polgar, who's the tech ethicist, who's put together all Tech is Human, and he has an incredible network of people around the world who are really looking at this stuff. And then you have my colleague in Metaversal Wellbeing, or what we're now changing the name to Meta Well, Kelly Cloutier-Pernick, who is originally, I can never remember where she's originally from, but I think her mum's over near, oh, I get the states all confused. What's the one in between Washington and Philadelphia?
Delaware,
No,
Maryland,
it's not that. It's New
Virginia.
Hampshire. I think she's in New Hampshire or
Oh, New
something.
Hampshire, that's all the way up.
Oh,
Yes, yeah,
that's further
above
up. Okay, I'm
Boston.
getting all my
Yes,
geography
I
confused.
understand. No
But we've got
worries.
this project. I was just working on it. We are going to launch for your US election a tool to help people really consume the news around the election better.
Oh, so this is like
So
media literacy sort
it
of
is
stuff.
definitely, yeah. And with a spiritual bend, I guess what we're trying to do is really bring it into our humanity and this technology to really control what we're being fed and choosing,
Right.
some of the work that is, going back to some of the more, I don't even want to say spiritual tools, but certainly the inherent human tools around
Yeah, yeah. So
present,
humanistic. Yeah.
slowing down, tuning out, like to go
Breathing,
back to some of the hippie
feeling.
stuff, right? Like if we go back to the drop city kind of culture, of dropping
Right.
out of the counterculture movement.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so stay tuned for that because
So
that
this
will
is
be, yeah, really,
this
really
sounds
cool.
like anti-amygdala hijacking training.
Yeah, absolutely, right? It's really about staying in that full brain, being conscious to and alert, but not alarmed, as we would say.
Yes.
Just being
Yes.
really aware that there is that hijacking intention. And there's the nefarious intention when we come to, how many elections have we had now in a digital kind of world? Each time it ramps up. And now the threat of AI, disinformation, malinformation, which is far worse than just misinformation. Oops, I got that fact
Right.
wrong. I am purposely embedding the wrong, false, purposely salacious information
Right.
to stop people being able to make a democratic choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I'm
Super
I'm right
scary.
there with you.
Yeah.
Right there with
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So,
And
I
but
mean, I think, Craig, we could talk for hours, and thank you so much for getting up. I'm not sure whether you caught everything that I said, but I'm recording this, so I'll pop it on YouTube. Feel free to, watch back over
beautiful.
it. Was there, from what you caught, I'm sorry that I didn't flip it around the other way, that I didn't have your
No,
questions
it's no worries.
this one. But from what I said, was there anything that you might have caught? Was there anything that you wanted to ask that makes sense
Well,
what you did say?
it does make sense. What really, and I jotted some notes here as you were speaking. And by the way, I'm interested in hearing the other Q&A
Oh,
that you're
yeah,
going to
stick
do.
around. Yeah.
Just the importance of modeling, training, and habituation.
Yeah.
So that, as adults, we have to work at it harder because we are more deeply habituated, and the
Yeah.
change, the regrooving, I'll say, of our neural pathways is that
Yeah.
much more difficult. What I
Absolutely.
heard in what you're saying is that we're giving, if we as adults can model, I like to think about the four roles of technology: educate, train, social support, and measurement.
Yeah.
And if we can steep our children in that while their brains and neurologies are still developing, they're going to have a much easier task and be better habituated.
Yeah.
They're going to be better digital citizens, we might say. Right?
Absolutely. And we will have to have a whole session just on how we need to rebrand digital citizenship, because it's deeply unsexy. Just like parent education, right? Parent education.
Yeah.
It's like, who wants to be educated as a parent? It's a really hard sell. Being a good digital citizen is a really hard sell. We really need to think about rebranding that into much more of an opportunity, in my opinion, that the citizenship piece is really kind of mixed up with a whole bunch of other kind of not very, like I just say, not very sexy things for young people. It's not, there's not really something that is super attractive to them. And again, part of that I think is because things like being old enough to vote or feeling that your vote counts, and you know, definitely in the US where you don't have to vote, there's no compelling reason to stand in a queue and take a day off work. I don't know if you know, but in Australia, our elections are on Saturdays and it's compulsory. You get fined $60 if you don't turn up.
Oh, really?
They're held at primary schools.
I wish we had that.
They're held at primary schools, usually at schools and primary schools all over Australia. And we have a thing called democracy sausage, where often the P&T, I think you would call it, the parent teacher group, or the PNC would often put on, you know, a barbecue and, you know, really a cake stall, all of that sort of stuff. And we call it democracy sausage. So it's a really big event in Australia to turn up and vote. We make a big song and dance out of it. And I think America could learn a lot from our system. You kind of took the British parliamentary system and really screwed it up over there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
From what I can tell. You know, and
even I am working on moving to Europe or Portugal, somewhere in Europe, or
yeah, we've got
I was in Singapore
family.
I was in Singapore for a bit of time
Oh,
and
wow.
enjoyed it there. But of course, it's different being an expat because you're not engaged in the local politics. You're
That's
just there
right.
enjoying. You're kind of invisible, enjoying living in a place, but not, so.
I am really hoping I don't have to institute my own travel ban on America again, because when there's a certain person in power, I do not go to America, even if it is the nice states and the more kind of reasonable states. I put my own travel ban on. So I'm hoping,
with you.
I'm hoping
Yeah,
I don't have to do that,
family.
but I'm not
Only
holding my
family
breath at
keeps
this
me
point.
from. Only family keeps me from banning America myself, and I'm an American. So yeah.
So yes, please do watch
Okay,
out for the
so
Metaversal Wellbeing plan that's coming down the line. And you know, I'm happy to line up a chat, just the two of us, if you want to explore more of who's over there for you to connect with, because you know, that's hours of conversation we can have right there.
yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up some of the people you've talked about. I have to keep up my research. As a former marketer, I've already written down a few. Were you talking about rebranding? My marketing brain immediately starts spinning. So I'm going to send you some ideas around that. One of the things that that I thought about and wanted to ask you about as I was thinking about this call is, do you ever do guest interviews?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah.
So I want to give some more thought, but I would love to engage you. I don't do podcasts. I do purely blogging.
Yeah.
But just kind of like a Q&A written format of kind of an exchange between us.
Yeah, you want to send me the questions. What I tend to do is record voice memos. I find
Yes.
that's a lot more kind of organic rather than me sort of sitting there trying to type stuff out.
Yeah.
And you can use that however you want. But yeah,
Okay. All right. Very good.
Use the good old email and reach out.
Okay. And do you have well, let me also say that your Instagram is fabulous. So yesterday, my wife and I were looking at it. She's like, how long has she been doing this? I said,
way
she's
too
been
long.
like 2015 or something like that. So thank you very much for that service. just like the look and the feel and the design of what
Oh,
you do is
beautiful. Thank
really
you.
cool.
Yeah. I
You
love
are
my
you a
design.
designer or do
I
you
didn't
outsource a lot of that?
I do all my Instagram myself. So while I've had my
Really?
brand designed up, it's purely Canva. So you know, I'm not a Photoshop girl, but Canva's really made that accessible. And I am quite pedantic. I mean, sometimes I post things and I think, oh, I should have moved that, and I have to really practice letting go.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've just got an aesthetic around that, you know, in formatting and documents and all of that.
Right.
I
Well,
probably
I
just
just want to affirm from here, you're looking
Oh,
good.
amazing. Thank you. And
You're
I've been
looking good.
really
Yeah.
slack lately. I used to have it really, really perfectly. And yeah, sometimes it feels like the return on it. I don't know who's looking. I don't know who's, you know, where it's landing. And it feels
Yeah,
like
it's
I have
very
to keep
nicely done.
feeding that
Very
beast
nicely done.
more and more and more. So yeah.
Right.
Um,
Okay. All
but
right.
thank you
Let
so
me
much
ask you
for
this.
getting, pardon?
Are there any oh yeah, we are getting to the end of time.
What's
Let
that?
me stop. I've got some good information. I'm going to write you,
We can
but
reconnect.
I want to hear
Absolutely.
and I want to hear the answer to the other question that
Yeah,
so I'm going to have
absolutely.
you on while
Stay
you
on
do
because
that.
I've got a couple of things and you know, like I'm not in a rush. I don't have to be out of here. I'm my own boss. So I can take as long as I need to make this all happen. I'm just going to share these slides again, just so you don't have to look at my big head all the time. There I am, back in the Zoom. I'll jump through here. So cool that you're all the way in Philadelphia. I haven't been to Philadelphia since 2015 when I went to the Beck Institute and I did
Ah,
CBT training with Judith Beck and Aaron Beck. He was
yes.
still alive at the time. So I got to
Right.
meet him and watch him do a Q&A and watch him actually do a little practice. It was
Right.
amazing. So,
Wow. Where
yeah,
in Australia are you?
I'm in Sydney.
Yeah, so I was in
Yeah.
Sydney 7 years ago now.
There you go. Yeah,
Lovely.
about the same amount of time. It feels like, oh no,
Yes,
what is 20,
very nice.
2015's now? 9 years ago. Oh my gosh. Anyway,
Yes.
so we got this other question from Neil. So there were two fellas who sent us questions, and this one then must have been from Neil. How do you discourage teens using multiple devices, phones, laptops, TVs all at once? I hope they're not using all of them all at once. Because data shows multitasking is not a good practice. Absolutely, it doesn't. And it goes back to, I think, Cal Newport's first book, was it first or second book, Deep Work? And really basically shows, and a lot of the research shows, that our brains are simply very quickly switching between different modes. So you think that you're, you know, making a Canva tile over here and doing something over there, but your brain is actually having to switch. And there's a cost to that switching. There's this lag to actually get back on track. So how I discourage teens from most things isn't by telling them you should really not do that thing because, you know, I'm an old lady and I know lots of things about the world. It's to say, hey, can I tell you more about how your brain works? Can I explain to you that not only is your brain underdeveloped and is still making these intricate connections between feelings, experiences, data. It's looking around, it's taking, you know, a whole bunch of very quick bits of information and chucking it all together to output your behavior. The more that we understand then also that it's an ancient operating system, that we can then understand cognitive load and cognitive load theory, which says your brain is like at capacity. You can only, it's kind of like a jug. You can only pour a certain amount in it. And then there's this filter system where information then needs to be sorted. And it doesn't just, you know, very quickly go boop, 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 and sort itself. It needs time to filter through. It also needs sleep. So a lot of our processing happens when we sleep. That's why sleep is one of the first things that I do when I'm working with young people, whether it's for general, you know, mood sort of stuff or anxiety stuff, whether it's for really specific, you know, addictions to technology, we sort out sleep. We see whether we can get sleep back on track so that we can give your brain enough rest and then to be able to, you know, manage that cognitive load. I think too, what's happening and what I see for all people is this real information overload. Some people call it infobesity. I kind of am edging away from that because it is a little bit of a fat shaming, fattest kind of way of talking about, being obese, rather than just saying, yes, it's too much information than fits. And certainly even it was 10 years ago that research was saying things like we're consuming 170 newspapers worth of information in a day, far more than, a generation before us. And certainly, if we go back multiple generations and look at our ancestors, what they were consuming information from the stars. They were consuming information from their neighbor who would say, be careful, there is, a wolf on the prowl and it's going to eat your chickens and your sheep, or, whatever might be going on. We had those sort of much smaller, but very, very important networks. So to go back and, think about, how do we understand that cognitive load? Do young people actually get lessons in how their brain works, the neurobiology of that? Do we understand how attention works? And one of the things, I guess, that's happening in Australia, and again, I'm sure all over the world, is this explosion of ADHD diagnoses. And quite frankly, no one is very good at paying attention to something that they are not interested in. So when we pare back some of the, really socio-cultural aspects of attention, and I could go off on a tangent here and talk about how even Keith Connors, the father of the Connors diagnostic tool that many people would be using to diagnose ADHD, said, I actually got it a bit wrong, because a classroom is not a very natural environment for a developing brain to sit, look at the front, ignore all of the stimuli around them, whether it's all the artwork hanging in the primary school classroom or their mates, being children, right? While they sit in this box and learn this stuff. It's actually not how we were built or designed. So there's a whole nother piece there before we even look at the attention hijacking nature of the online world. So what we can do there then is, apart from explaining the brain, explaining how when we carve out time for deep work, and that's really only a 90-minute window per day. It's not like you can do 6 hours of deep work, but really thinking about how we do that focused attention task, how we be in that state of being indistractable. If, Nir Eye's kind of work around indistractable, thinking about there's actions that you can take that are either distracting or where you build traction with the stuff that matters. There's an aspect here too for young people around working with biorhythms and chronotypes. So just acknowledging that our brains get tired, and that 3 o'clock drop that many of us adults experience really has to do with some of those rhythms. It has to do with our blood sugar levels. It has to do with our hydration, but it also has to do with our chronotype. So my chronotype, I don't wake up early. You cannot get me out of bed before about 7 o'clock. I don't actually set an alarm. Most people in my household are my alarm, so I get up when they force me to. Like 8 o'clock is usually my out, and I've been known to be able to get myself and my child up and out the door and to school on time by waking up at 8:15. So, we skate close to the edge quite a bit, but really working with what and you can notice within your body, right? So this again comes down to tuning into this and all of this incredible system that we're often abdicating kind of tuning into, and instead grabbing for all these other hacks and tools and apps and all this other crap. So what I get people to do is get really good at noticing discomfort around being on task, and how often, not only are they using, they're pretending to be on their laptop doing their homework, but they've got music going on over here, and then they've got, 28 different messenger streams happening on their phone, that it would be much more effective for them to do that boring and hard work. And often I just work with kids on neutralizing it. We don't have to call it boring. We don't have to call it hard. It just has to be a thing that we do. We do it just like a pair of Nikes. We get it done. And then you can go and fully enjoy the conversations with your friends, be fully immersed in the music that you're reading. You could even be on Spotify reading the lyrics along, just like I read the lyrics along with CDs in the 90s, right? Me and Tori Amos CD sleeves singing along. I can still sing you all of those songs right now. Because just our experience of listening to music was so much more present and deep than having stuff on in the background, which is often, you chewing up some of that cognitive load, chewing up some of those cognitive resources. So some of this has to do with being really what we would talk about distress tolerance. And that again doesn't mean, oh, I'm putting up with awful, awful, awful amounts of yuck. It's actually just going, each time I have that wiggle and I don't want to do that thing, I can just notice, oh, that's my natural human urge to seek pleasure. And I can seek better pleasure when I do this boring thing or this thing that is a must do, not a nice to do, and just get on with it. So often the picture that I paint for anyone who wants to listen to me is to monotask like a ninja, be really, really focused, get that one thing done, and then enjoy fully the other stuff that you want to be doing. So the very long-winded answer to that question that Neil sent us in. The final thing that I'll share is a kind of little update. So some people have been like following along with how I digitally parent and what I do with my nearly 7-year-old now around her use of screens. So she's in year 2 this year, and we made a new rule that there would be no TV. So most of her kind of screen use is TV. Some of it's TV like YouTube on the big TV. She doesn't generally watch YouTube on any other smaller devices versus streaming services like, you know, ABC Kids and things like that. So this year, year 2, we really wanted to save her brain grapes. She does, I'm quite open that I have an ADHD diagnosis. I think her dad is probably a little bit inattentive, and she certainly is in an amazing creative brain, right? And I don't pathologize that. It's just like part of what happens to me is I am, you know, shiny object syndrome. I'm really good at the ideas. I'm not good at the completion. And I guess I was just really noticing, again, not pathologizing her distraction. Her distraction is amazing because she's so into some of the really good content that she watches. But we were having these arguments about turning the TV off and getting to school on time. Now, while we were never late, I was late to school once, and that was, I can't even remember why, but she's been late once in 2 years. The arguments were really what was doing my head in, and the 1 more minute and just in a second and all of that sort of stuff. So I was just like, okay, new year, we're not actually doing this. I explained to her why, because it's about cognitive load. So I'll get to that in a second, thanks. It's about cognitive load, and that we wanted to really keep her brain fresh so all of the learning could pour into her brain, and that was what her brain held on to. So initially, in the first couple of days, it was really hard, and she did all sorts of tricky things to try and get us to turn the TV on. Even in that, she was very creative. But now it's week 7 of school. So it's technically kind of week 6 because we had this weird week at the start. She just knows that's not an option. So it's just not on her radar. And she goes off and does various creative things. So she's off doing, you know, I'm going to write a big blog about this, and I've got photos of all the different things. This was the other morning where she sat down and did a puzzle. So she's got a bunch of puzzles in a drawer. She pulled out this puzzle and did that puzzle with her dad. She then went off and got the modeling clay out and made a snake. She's got a bit of phobia at the moment about snakes and bugs and all this sort of stuff. And she said, I've got to face my fears. I'm going to make a snake. So she went and made a snake. So that's drying. I've got a photo of that. I won't spoil it all. I'll save it up for the blog. One morning she put like all these chairs in a row and pretended she was in first class on a plane and made me serve her breakfast in first class on a plane. So it's just gone into creativity zone for like an hour and a half in the morning. What's really interesting to me is we are now having issues with stopping crafting or stopping making the snake or putting the puzzle away or doing whatever, where it's like, 1 more minute, 1 more minute. I need to finish this. I haven't finished making. Like the other morning, she made a dress out of plastic. Like I've got all this craft stuff, and she made a bubble wrap dress, and she'd like sticky tape just into the bubble wrap dress. She's like, I haven't finished putting the bow in it. And I'm like, I need to get you dressed. Like we are not ready for school. It's 8:10. So now we're actually having to put on the same kind of alarm and the same kind of system that we did for TV, an alarm at 8 o'clock with a 5-minute warning where it's a hard out by 8:10 so we can make sure that we're doing all of this stuff. This is messy. There's like every inch of my house has a little project or a little, bunch of stuff left over from it. But it's so worth it because it's so fun to watch what her brain comes up with. So I have noticed too that the messiness and the lack of containment, I think, is what probably gets us into a little bit of habit. And I'm going to speak as a kind of female identifying human, a mother who really likes tidiness, that I really have to kind of get out of my head around making everything tidy and just be in the mess of the creativity. So that's a little share from my perspective on how that's going. And I will really write that up and share a little bit more and show you some photos of all the fun stuff that we've been doing. I'll just come back to, Craig has asked, what do I think of attention deficit as attention abundance and as of a trait rather than disorder? Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I go to that just ADHD as the name for it. But I actually do believe that, we are in abundance of ideas, or in abundance of creativity, we're in abundance of thinking. And we're often creating that deficit pathologizing aspect of it, rather than, what I really love talking about more these days is that sociological umbrella of neurodivergence, just to say our brains and everyone's brains, if everyone is neurodiverse, then no one's neurodiverse. Like, we all have incredible brains, but there are some brains that have, more intelligence, more sensitivities, more, connections. There's all of these different kind of things happening. So absolutely, I think there's this big shift happening. It's happening with antidepressants and the way that we kind of understand, treatment of depression, that an SSRI is not going to correct your serotonin. It's not going to make the world or the situation that you're living in less depressing. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that I will leave for now, but that I'm very, very passionate about. And similarly with, aspects of attention deficit, attention abundance, neurodiversity, all of those sorts of things. So yeah, thank you. Lots of, little people doing their thing and just watching how interesting, that can be. So little grandchildren running around in your house, Craig, and yeah, really trying to affirm their creativity, because I think the schooling system sometimes, doesn't necessarily foster that busyness and the chaos and things that are happening. So that concludes. That was an amazing Ask Me Anything today. Thank you for being here. I'm just going to check in. Eva, I can see that you're online. I'm not sure whether you submitted a question or would like to ask a question before we end up, just in case I don't want to jump off and you are actually really keen to ask a question. Give you a second. You are on mute, so if you did want to ask something. No, you're not sure. You probably just jumped on for the fun of it. Thank you for being here. It will be, it's all recorded. I'll chuck it up onto the YouTube machine and you can watch back, and please submit your question for next time. Let me see what I've got. What's the next date? There you go, April 11. Oh, we've got Eva, just wanting advice when partner not on board. Eva, you're probably going to have to give me a little bit more information. If you want to unmute yourself and ask away, feel free. Can't wait for next time. Okay, not a problem. Jump on or email me your particular question. Give me as much information as you want, de-identify it, and, I'll just talk generally if you'd like. Getting on the same page, I even say, rather than, the same page, are you in the same chapter on the same book? Because that would be a starting point. So depending where the gap is, then you just need to bring it in. And the allowing unlimited screen time might be because there's lack of other strategies there. There's a discomfort with knowing how to play. I'm not very good at playing. I will absolutely credit my partner in parenting for being like a legend with the creativity. I am, there's some things I just, really, okay. My heart's not in it. So there's a lot around that. It can be lacking those strategies. It can be not really seeing the long-term impacts. You know, you maybe just start by talking about the quality of the content and reining that in. So it might be unlimited time, but it's specific types of content. So we might really limit some of the unfettered YouTube and the way the algorithm might be shaping what I presume it's the kids are seeing, things like that. But yeah, feel free to email me and kind of paint the picture for me so I can give you a little bit more tailored work. So April 11 is the next one. That's a Thursday. It's about the same time. I don't think our daylight savings is finished by then. So you'll be able to log on and learn. So thanks again for being here. Like massive props to you, Craig, for the early morning start all the way from Philly.
Yes.
That's totally made my day. That's so awesome. Thank you. And I'm sure we will
This has
talk
been
more.
great.
Cool.
All right. We'll be in touch. Thank you again. Be well.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.